Yeah. I wouldn't say I chose this field. God willed this field for me. And it is because of my background. I always thought I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, or work with animals. And so by the time I was 12, though, I had completely cast off all restraint. And there was a lot behind that. Whenever I say all restraint, I mean like all like submission to authority. I got this idea in my head that, and it was from anger and trauma and sadness and all the things. But I got this idea in my head that freedom's available to me, and my idea of freedom was why do I have to follow rules? Why, it's kind of goes back to some of the deconstructionist thoughts of like, why are we doing what we're doing? Why do I have to stop at a red light? Why do we, who made this rule? And why do I have to obey it? Because it's not fun to obey rules. And I really like started having these thoughts at a very young age. And so I started looking for fun and quote freedom in things like using drugs at 12, getting blackout drunk at 13, using cocaine at 14, having sex at 14. And it just spiraled into eventually shooting heroin by the time I was 18 years old. Incarceration was a huge part of my story. The first time I was locked up, I was 15. And I was on probation my entire adolescence. I had a curfew most of my adolescence, which I broke a lot. I was sent to various group homes. I went to a children's home. And this wasn't because my mom didn't love me. She truly was trying to save my life and was trying to save me from myself. This wasn't a situation where I was not wanted at home or anything like that. My mom didn't know what to do. I didn't grow up in a Christian home. I was adopted by my father when I was 8, and he is Jewish, but he was very interested in Eastern thought and Eastern religions. So we went to a Universalist Unitarian congregation. I'm not going to call it a church because it's not a church, where there's many pathways to the top of the mountain. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but there was never like a hostility towards Christ. My mom had grown up with a Christian background. So we would go to church for Easter and Christmas just out of tradition. We'd put up a Christmas tree. Not that that's necessarily Christian either, but we weren't, there was no hostility to Jesus, but God was definitely not defined. And there was a lot of just esoteric mystery around things that are spiritual. I had no real spiritual guidance, I guess you could say, but I was definitely searching for freedom. And I thought freedom was found in having no rules. So it got me locked up
Yeah.
quite a few times.
So take
Yeah.
us, after that situation, how did you get to where you are today, where you're clean and sober? And if you don't mind to just share a little bit more of that journey from, those dark moments in your life to where you are now and your redemption story.
Yeah. So when I was in jail, this is partly why I love prison ministry. When I was in jail, there was a prison ministry that came, and at the time my heart was fertile. I think God waited for the proper time to sow that seed of faith in my heart so that it was in good soil. And I thank him for that. But I had to get to the end of myself, and I had to figure out that my methods of trying to find freedom did not work. And it brought darkness and decay and despair and destruction in my life. And so when I was in jail, the gospel was brought to a group of us that were in there. A lot of times we will go to the church services or the Bible studies when you're in jail just to get out of your cell. And depending on what jail you're in, in the Wilmington jail, I remember it was 20-hour lockdown. So you got out
Mm.
twice a day for 2 hours. But in the Forsyth County jail, which is in Winston-Salem, you had more freedom to kind of get out of your jail cell. But anytime you can get out, you took it. And I took it. And the gospel was presented, but it was from the story of the woman with the bleeding disorder who said to herself, if I can just touch the hem of his garment. And they brought a prayer shawl with tassels on it. And they said, they invited us to come and touch the tassels representing Jesus's garment, to just the touch of faith. And I just remember like something unleashed inside of me. And I wept. And I was the first one up to that garment. And then every lady just started popping up, weeping to go to that garment. I'm sure these two little old ladies were like, I can only imagine like their conversation as they're leaving that day and in the car. But that was the first time I really tasted freedom, and I was in jail. And I remember, and I say this often, but this was the first indicator of the Spirit living within me. I remember waking up and I had like a little window about that big, that could see the sunrise in the morning. And when I saw it rise, I remember like waking up like a kid in a candy shop or on Christmas morning, so excited to see the sunrise because it came from the understanding of knowing the love of God, of knowing God himself, the one who makes it rise. Like everything was brand new.
Yeah.